Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. In this episode, I'm in Montreal to meet Antoine Emile, President and CEO, New Look Vision Group. An international executive with over 25 years in the eyeglass industry, Antoine shares his vision for the category and has over 400 retail stores. Leveraging a solid financial foundation and innovative category-leading technology, New Look continues to expand their market presence and see their way through to growth despite the limitations of the COVID era.
We were thinking, maybe 2022 we'll run the tests. We'll probably have to convince, quite many people and have a successful test and so on. We were given the opportunity, two fantastic opportunities. One was all our retail teams were consigned home. They were not forbidden to come to the store. They could come to the store. We were just not allowed to have any customers there. So it was the best training round one could ever hope for. And secondly, we didn't have to convince anybody.
Let's listen in now. Antoine, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
Very well, thank you. I'm the thankful one. Feel very privileged talking to you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I'm really excited to learn about you and about your business. I'm a fan from afar, so to speak. I don't know as much about your business as I'd like to, so it's a real great opportunity for me. Why don't we start at the beginning? Tell us about yourself, your background, and your role at New Look Vision.
I've been an optical person all my professional life, actually. I became one by chance. I born and raised in Europe, wanted to see the world, and found my first job in the US in an optical lens company, and in marketing. Although I had a finance background, and I liked the mission. I liked the engineering challenge, and I liked the complexity of the business model. So I stayed on. I'm not alone though. Most people in the optical industry tend to be lifers, not necessarily in the same company, but remaining in the industry. And I feel this is because the mission is strong to provide people with vision. Is a very noble task, and it can be done at volume, which brings an everyday satisfaction to all of us in the industry. I think we go home at night, feeling that we've done a lot of good in the day. My role at New Look Vision Group, well, as the CEO, I guess one would describe it as answering to shareholders on the use of their money. But I would say in a less prosaic way, probably I would say I choose the endeavors and I choose the people, and that's really what the role is about.
Right. So, and we're going to get into this later on. Leadership in the COVID era and leadership before the COVID era, never easy, always interesting. So I'm really keen to get your insights about how to lead in such a different time that we're in. But let's talk about New Look Vision itself, the origin story, how you go to market, number of stores, and then what makes you, lots of competition, lots of people who offer the product that you offer, broadly speaking. So what makes you different? But let's start, just give us the basics and then talk about what makes you different.
The basics, even before New Look Vision Group, maybe a few words on the optical industry, because it's not a very big one. It's about the size of skincare as a worldwide industry. And it will explain a lot of what I guess we'll be discussing in the rest of the podcast. So optical is demographic driven. Basically, 90% of the population after the age of 65 wear some form of vision correction. So there's a very significant demographic tailwind, and that has been with us for the past 40 years, and it's not forecasted to abate anytime soon. It's also a business which has fairly significant barriers to entry, because there's a medical part to it. We operate at the crossroad of healthcare and retail, and the medical part is regulated. So we partner or employ ophthalmologists, optometrists, and opticians, and obviously access to those professional resources is a barrier to entry. Now, New Look Vision Group is the largest Canadian optical retailer by far. We have 400 more than 400 locations across the country, each with a clinic and a store. And we started from about 70 stores 8 years ago in the province of Quebec. We operate in 3 professional segments: ophthalmology, optometry, and optician. We are vertically integrated, which means we make our lenses, and we assemble about 3,000 pair of glasses every day.
Wow.
And we entered the US market in 2020, actually.
Good timing.
In early March 2020, yes.
Oh, that's great timing. That's perfect.
Thankfully, it is in the very high end segment, which is a segment we love in Canada. We've accumulated experience in, and I say very, very fortunately, because when we will get to discuss the post-COVID performance, obviously luxury has been performing extremely well. So although we had it started with a big fright,
yeah,
it is now drawing a big smile. So
take me back to those days for a minute. You know, since we're talking about March and April of 2020, what was first on your mind? I've talked to executives like yourself who said, you know, their first thought was, you know, it went from worrying about liquidity in the business to keeping their people safe to, okay, we're going to get through this, but how do we adjust the business? What was that time for you? Take me back to the moment when you realized the magnitude of what we were about to, you know, the magnitude of the COVID era.
I'll start with maybe an anecdote. It really took place the day Edward Biner, whom we had just acquired in the US, who's a close friend and a very long time relationship, was actually in Montreal, finalizing everything. And we went to dinner, and we were having a very, very nice non-business conversation. And then our respective cell phones started ringing, and those were our store people, telling us, well, the College of Optician or College of Optometry is actually asking us to shut down. So I think that night it really dawned on us, right. And followed, I would say, 5 weeks of finding the way and guiding our people through. And I thought we should go by 3 principles, and the first one was participation. It was very clear that we had a very big role to play in stemming the spread of the pandemic by closing stores, as many stores as we could, short of completely cutting society off from eye care. So we kept about 10% of our stores open for that. But closing the stores, closing the offices, closing the factory, all that seemed very important in those early days. We needed to get people home, and just not exposing anybody. The second principle that came right after was really protection. So protection of our people who stayed out, protection of the company, obviously. Thankfully, we went into the crisis fairly lean, so we knew where every dime was, and that made cash conservation a fairly quick action. I mean, we didn't have to roam the drawer to scrap the last penny.
Right. You knew the levers. You knew well the levers to pull. Right.
Yeah, we knew where it was, and then of course started discussion with our lenders and our landlords, and even before that, protecting our employees from a financial standpoint. So we implemented a salary protection program even before the government said anything about what became CERB. And we committed on day one not to send anybody home with less than 75% of their normal income, so that at least they could be home and taking care of their loved ones without worrying about how much cash they would have in the bank. And then
you said you had 400 stores, but and you manufacture. In total, how many people work for your company?
About 2,800.
Okay, lots. Yeah.
And then the third principle was responsibility. So that translated into keeping 10% of the clinics open for anybody who needed emergency access to either eye care, typically an optometrist, or eyewear. I mean, even stuck at home, people do break their glasses and can't function without. Yeah. And we felt we needed to be there to replace those. We also launched a program we called Guardian Angels, and that was a pledge to replace broken eyeglasses for frontline health workers within 24 hours. And if they had no valid insurance coverage, we would cover the cost of replacement. So hospital personnel, ambulance services, that sort of thing. And in the span of 3 months, we replaced about 5,000 pair of glasses.
What a great initiative!
And then we retooled the factory as part of responsibility. Also, we retooled the factory and started manufacturing safety eyeglasses, which are obviously needed in settings like hospitals, elderly care home, that sort of environment, and that are needed with prescription for those who need vision correction. Because putting a pair of safety glasses on top of a pair of prescription glasses under a visor in a warm environment, you're really compounding the difficulties to see well.
Yeah, no kidding. Very comprehensive. So let's take a step back. So before time, if you and I were having this conversation in 2019, what were the strategies that you were what were the strategies you were pursuing to make you successful? It is, on the one hand, it can be a crowded market, right? There's new entrants who have new business models. What is it that led to your success and to the growth? What are the kind of 1 or 2 or 3 key pillars of what makes your company successful?
I think what sets us apart and eventually made us successful are 3 things really. The external growth model. We've grown by acquisition, mostly from 70 to 400 stores. And our external growth model is very much based on people, which means that we don't go by geography. We don't unfold the map and say, we want to be in Vancouver, in Toronto, and in Los Angeles. We go wherever we find amazing operation teams. And this has taken us to, I would say, unexpected geography. We obviously acquired Vogue Optical in 2013, which has a very strong position in Atlantic Canada. That was our first acquisition. That was a big acquisition. We paid almost the same value as New Look itself, in a geography that didn't have the best economic fundamentals as far as statistics were concerned. But we found there an amazing operation team committed to stay, committed to operate, and committed to develop. So probably that acquisition model of ours has underpinned a big part of the success. The second one is we operate a very decentralized organization, which means that acquired business unit retain their brand, retain their executive team, retain their culture. They're really empowered by everything we bring in the back office, in the outlook, in the financial resources, and they're free to compete in the market, including with other of our divisions. So there's sister companies. And I find this absolutely critical to maintain the identity, the motivation, and really the sparks in the team. And the third one is innovation. One of the biggest motivation to increase the size of the company was that we wanted to be able to invest in innovation, in the technology that would take us forwards and increase our differentiation. And that's basically to digitalize the customer journey. So that's our investment in omnichannel, mostly in scanning, in virtual try-on, in order to be able to take part of the customer journey outside of the store, and as importantly, to be able to deliver or to take optical measurement remotely. The big barrier today in dispensing glasses without seeing the patient is the ability to take precise measurement, without which glasses just don't work. We were very motivated in innovating in that field, investing in that field, and breaking that technical barrier, which we have done.
So, is it fair to call it? It doesn't sound like you're a holding company. You're more engaged in that, but you provide kind of shared services and direction for the different companies. How did you lead, or how are you leading in the time that we're in amongst your peers or amongst the companies? As you say, they operate as individual brands and individual operating units, but how do you pull it all together when on any given day we don't know if the stores are going to be closed or open, or governments are pumping the brakes, or where you are? How has your leadership style changed, if at all, or maybe it was perfect for these times? Could you speak to that for a little bit?
I would never think it was perfect in any circumstances. I think you lead one leads with one heart and with clarity. In those COVID days, in the early days of the pandemic, in the shutdown, clarity was absolutely essential, including clarity about the fact that I had absolutely no idea how long the shutdown would last.
You're right. Sure.
I had a fairly good confidence in how long we could hold out. But there again, there was crystal clarity with within the executive group that, we could hold out a number of quarters, but if that were to last, more than a year, we would probably run into a shortage of cash. Yeah. And leading with the heart, I think, is the translation of the love and care for our people. I mean, we obviously had a very large number of people consigned in their home. We didn't know for how long. We needed to keep them engaged. We fairly quickly take the opportunity of that shutdown to train them, to inspire them, and then to bring them back early in the stores to train on a new model. Because during the pandemic, basically, I would say we had a 3 months complete shutdown. The first month was really spent to address the crisis, address the three principles I spoke about earlier. And then really we came to a point where we felt about a month in, when I say we, I mean the exec team, came to a point where we felt the company was secure, the employees were secured, and it was now time to turn towards the future and imagine what reopening will have to look like, whenever that would be. The only thing we didn't know was the date. But we started rethinking the customer journey, rethinking the store, and obviously inventing the health and safety protocols, which obviously were going to be a big part of how we would reopen. And we were, obviously we were fortunate because we had a very strong restart, which that sort of thing never comes without a dose of fortune. Yeah. We had been thinking for a while actually about operating by appointment. And we were thinking, maybe 2022 we'll run the tests. We'll probably have to convince, quite many people and have a successful test and so on. Well, we were given the opportunity, two fantastic opportunities. One was all our retail teams were consigned home. They were not forbidden to come to the store. They could come to the store. We were just not allowed to have any customers there. So it was the best training round one could ever hope for. And secondly, we didn't have to convince anybody because when we reopened, that was the only way we were allowed to operate. Yeah. So we seized on that opportunity and leveraged it. The other one is, after the first months of really securing everything, we had quite a bit of resource because we kept everybody on full time. We had quite a bit more resource than we would have had we been operating normally. And we really dedicated those available resources to speeding up our omni-channel implementation. the facial scan, which gives us a very rich 3D image ear to ear, on which we can overlay frames for the virtual try-on and take measurements as precise as in stores. And as soon as we reopened, we deployed those tools, and with a day one application, which was we were able to take optical measurement from 6 feet away from the patient, when our competition was still with the ruler that the optician has to hold on the face of the customer. So in a time when not only it was the right thing to do, the distanciation, but it was also important for the staff from a safety standpoint, and extremely important to customers. Nobody really wanted to be less than 6 feet from somebody else. That gives us a great advantage, first in the comfort it brought to our store team, and second, obviously was appreciated by customers.
Is there anything that you're going to leave behind? So you've talked about how you accelerated things, pilots became full rollouts, and uncertainty became strategy. Now, is there anything you're going to leave behind with your experience in the past 18 months? For example, some executives have said, I think I'm going to move to a hybrid model of my head office staff now, as opposed to all the time in the office. Is there anything that you find you discovered that was inefficient, or that you're thinking about differently from that perspective?
I think we will leave behind self-imposed limitations we had before. Coming to the office, for example, as you just mentioned, was a big one. But it extends beyond the commuting and beyond the in-person meeting and all that. We were self-limiting ourselves by thinking we could only recruit in Montreal, where our head office is. Not true anymore. It actually was not true before either, but we just didn't have the guts to think it was.
Well, it's always been, it's interesting, right? Because it's always been possible. I mean, the technology hasn't changed. It's the culture that needed to change, particularly I find at the senior level, right? Can you have a senior executive or leader in a department that isn't physically in the office? That's a big change, right?
Precisely. It was always possible. We just didn't have the guts to do it. Now, obviously, it's almost like an evidence now. So that's one. The other one is obviously travel. I mean, we're all looking forward not being frequent flyers of any sort of qualification in the future. I think there was really too much of it before. We will still visit every store we plan to acquire. I think that's a very good principle. But beyond that, I think we can cut probably a third of what we were doing before.
Wow. Wow. I mean, you and I, we've probably lived through this same thing. I mean, we heard that after 9/11, but then it quickly in 3 or 4 years was record travel. Do you think it's going to stick this time around?
I think it will. Yes. I mean, I was based in Asia on 9/11. It did not affect Asian travel one bit.
Right. Yeah.
This is a worldwide, very long cap on travel. Yeah. We have been doing business in the past year with zero travel and pretty good business actually. And even the things we thought we were not going to be able to do, which to find that rare supplier of
new vendors or whatever,
new frame, that sort of thing, has not been really impeded, to be honest. So yes, I definitely think this time it will stick.
Well, it's funny. I don't think of it until I start talking about it. But I travel the world speaking and visiting. I mean, I'd be on an airplane 20, 30 times a year. It's been a year since I've been on an airplane. It's really phenomenal. In some ways I don't miss it. In some ways I do. I mean, I want the ability, but I'm hearing more and more executives like yourself saying, you know what, we need to fly. We need to visit our stores. That's a big constraint, right? Need to see the people, but maybe not as much from a sourcing perspective. Okay. So That's a great observation. Let's talk about the future. What's next? I think you've got some corporate structure news coming up, and for the listeners as well, the retailers listening, again, there's more competition than less. And what are your plans for moving forward, and how are you thinking about that?
First, I'll address the corporate news. We're a public company. We're going to go private. We're going to change controlling shareholders. It's going from financial investors to another type of financial investors, and then a private setting. I think it's a great operation because we're providing liquidity at a very satisfactory level to our present shareholders, and I think we have North American expansion plans, and a private setting is probably a good one to undertake that sort of expansion at this moment. So I would say timely and very good for current shareholders. Now, as far as the strategy going forward, it's more of the same, really. But COVID has vindicated really our beliefs and our directions, instead of having us thinking we should change paths. So external growth will continue. We operate in a very fragmented market. In Canada, more than half of optical stores are still independently owned, and therefore we still have a lot of runway in consolidating the market. And we entered the US in March 2020. We've already started expanding there beyond our first acquisition, and we'll do a lot of consolidation there as well in years to come. And then we have strong organic growth project because, as I explained, the motivation to increase the company in size was to generate investment capacity in technology. We have invested, we have deployed the technology, and this will continue to really change the customer journey in our stores. We're looking at digitalizing every step of the journey, except the medical part, and we are looking at optimizing the time in store. So whichever step of the journey the customer will choose to experience in store, we'll optimize that, we'll make it shorter, and we'll make it more interesting, more entertaining. And geographically, we are very likely to be North American in the next 4 years. But if there is an opportunity to pass beyond our shores, we'll obviously look at it and take it up.
Right. Now, you mentioned earlier that you play mostly, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so to speak, at the luxury end versus the value end. Is that a fair statement, and is that how you're seeing the future as well?
I think we're operating across the market spectrum, except in the discount value segment.
Okay.
Our optician business units operate in the core markets. Our optometry business unit in the higher segment, and we have been a consolidator of the very high-end segment, both in Canada and in the US. And very high-end means things beyond designer brand. We're talking jewelry or very rare items. So let's say Cartier and up. And that's the segment we entered the US with. That's the segment we're expanding in the US, but we're getting ready to play in the other segments of the US market as well.
Interesting. But the value end, that's not for you. You're going to play in different places.
That's right.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, listen, last question for you. Thanks. You've been very generous with your time. For your fellow retailers listening, not optical, any kind of retailer, do you have any advice of things? And I frame this sometimes in 2 starts and 1 stop. Things that they might want to start doing, and things like we talk about leaving things behind that they might want to stop doing. And what would be your advice to the listeners?
I'm really not one to give advice. I feel
I'm putting you on the spot.
I feel that's terribly presumptuous to do, but and I'm usually the one seeking advice. But and especially I see optical as a life of privilege, really operating in a segment which is essential and which is demographic driven. But maybe just humble takeaways from the past year. I would say two things really helped us through. One is crystal clarity on a couple of things, on the purpose of the company, what we actually do for society. Clarity of mind, and we discussed that briefly. It was made very clear inside the company what was possible and what was not. Clarity with the team and the customers. And the second thing that really helped us through was there is a very strong love for our people and really genuine concern, ambition, hope for them. Because in medical, in retail, and in manufacturing, which is the three fields we employ people in, teams are really the skills, but it's also the largest expense. Right. But for us, it's not an hourly rate in an income statement. We feel that who we pick, who we attract, who we retain, obviously, who we promote, is really our most valuable assets, and a lot of resource went to protecting and keeping that most valuable assets throughout the shutdown and the restart, which was not any easier than the shutdown, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
And for the third one, you ask for a stop. And nothing groundbreaking, I would say. I would say, look, there were a few weeks of really deep worry about the future. How much cash do we have? How long we're gonna be able to hold on, and so forth. And I would say we were fortunate to go into the shutdown in a fairly strong position. So if anybody would ask, I would say, just do not engage or stop engaging in anything that does not produce a healthy cash flow. Because if we had not gone into that shutdown, into that crisis in a strong financial position, we would not have been able to protect our people. We would have lost some of that, and we basically would have lost our most valuable assets. We're a retailer. It's a fairly technical retail, ours, and our people are really everything. I would say watch profitability like a hawk.
Cash flow.
Nobody wants to be left, gasping for equity at an inopportune time.
Yeah, you never, if nothing else, we know that you can't predict the future, so just prepare for uncertainty, right?
Yes, a good dose of that.
Well, listen, Antoine, thank you so much for spending time with the Voice of Retail. It's been great to learn more about you and more about the business and how you're thinking about it. I wish you much continued success. And once again, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so very much. And thank you for your interest in the company. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure and follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts, so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating review, as it really helps us grow so that we continue to get amazing guests onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of LeBlanc Company Inc., and if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe, have a great week.